Yeah. So it's French oak, but they're Spanish. It's French oak, but they're Spanish barrels. So yeah. So this is our barrel house, and our barrel house actually extends to right over there. So our and this is our house. So actually the office is behind all these barrels. So we have all our barrels, but then behind that.
Hey guys, welcome to the next episode of Wine Wizzo. This should be episode number 006 or 007. It's not James Bond, but it's just as sexy. I have my dear friend, Mr. Robert Muijzert, I hope I'm saying it right, who's coming live all the way from Nijmegen, which is a beautiful Dutch city on the border of Germany. And Rob is the head brewer of Neville Artisanal Ales, which is one of my absolute favorite breweries of all times. If you're new to sour beer, if you want to know about sour beers, this is the guy to look for, and this is the guy that I'm going to be speaking to. So Robert's been brewing beers, home brewing for about 11 years, and has been with Neville for about 3 years now. And let's pass the ball over to Rob. So Rob, how are you doing today?
Yeah. What's up, man? How's everyone doing? Hi. I'm great. I'm a little tired. I just had a brew, so I just finished brewing, but like I'm still game. So no, I'm feeling pretty well. I'm stoked. I'm super happy to be talking to you again and see you again. So
yeah, it's been a long time. I think it's almost been about a year, right?
Close to, close to, for sure. Yeah.
I think I remember like when I visited you last year, I ended up picking up about like 4 to 5 bottles of your beers, and I took it all the way back to Germany to share with my girlfriend's family, and then I ended up taking another 3 bottles back to Singapore, and everyone was just wondering what the hell was that when I showed them a beer, and like, you know, champagne top bottle is completely confused. But mate, they blew me away. They were so delicious and so different.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. They're. I mean, yeah. With the bottles aside, I mean, our beers are on a different type of approach and different wavelength than your standard, I guess, craft beer, if you want to call it that. We only do mixed firm stuff, so our beers are dry and crushable. You know, I think they're very tasty. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want to be able to have more than just one glass. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it obviously, but I'm really happy to hear that they came across well with others. So yeah.
Oh, it did. But I guess the question everyone keeps asking me is, what exactly are they? Like, how do you describe them? Are they considered sour beers? Are they, you know, is there like a
Right. Well, we are a brewery, so we make beer, you know, but we do other things as well, which we have a lot of different projects, a lot of side projects. We have some cider going on. We actually do wine hybrids, and we've actually released one wine so far, natural wine even, and we're trying to kind of keep that going. But our main production is still beer. And within beer, so what we do is we do mixed fermentation. So that means that we make use of multiple strains of yeast, but also different bacteria, which usually make the beer tart. A big word that gets thrown around is funk. So we make funky beers, which means that it's not your traditional style. So about 90% of the beers that are out there within the craft scene are clean, in what you would call it, which means they just use beer yeast, which is Saccharomyces, which is the single beer yeast. Within Saccharomyces, you have hundreds of different strains, but they all ultimately do one thing, which is convert sugars into alcohol and some CO2, and they produce some flavor, but it's normally overwhelmed by other aspects of the beer. So your malt profile or your hop profile, like an IPA, for example, is a good example, or stout is another good example of the two spectrums, or the full spectrum, I mean. So all the beers that we make are yeast focused in terms of flavor. Yeast is actually responsible for about 80% to 90% of the flavor within beer. But like I said, other breweries, they focus on other aspects of it to overpower that and just have the yeast as kind of a background. Whereas the types of beers that we make, it's really at the forefront. We want those cultures to speak loud and be proud. So Brettanomyces is the big one, really. Which creates that farmyard. Brettanomyces.
Brettanomyces.
So, so which is a wild yeast, which comes from Britain, which is why it was called Brett, and myces or ices is the root for yeast. Cool. So that's the big one, and within that there's a bunch of different varieties again. Then we use Lactobacillus, which is a souring, like yogurt. It's in yogurt and milk and stuff.
It's like a souring bacteria,
aspect, right? And it's good bacteria, exactly. Okay. Probacteria, that's right. Yeah. And the other one would be Lactobacillus. So those are, or sorry, Pediococcus. I just said Lactobacillus. So Pediococcus is the other one, which is also a souring agent. So those are the three big ones that we utilize, and within that there's again a large variety of strains, all bringing a different set of flavors and aromas to the table. So what we do is we actually have a house culture that we use for every single beer that we make.
What is a house culture?
Our house culture. Oh yeah, sure. A house culture. So it's our yeast. It's literally like our house yeast. So we cultivated it. This is great actually. It was harvested from grapes by one of the owners, from his parents' garden, if I'm not mistaken. So he harvested this yeast from the grapes, and initially we called it the Grape King. That's still what we call it. We call it Grape King today. Nice. That's the core of our yeast profile, and we never officially got it like tested, sent it to like a professional lab to actually figure out what it was. We did some small tests by people that we know. They were able to establish that it is a wild Saccharomyces, so it's just a wild, pure beer brewing yeast strain. We then blended that with a bunch of different yeast strains. So we blended that with Brettanomyces, Lactobacillus, and Pediococcus.
And is this like your
bunch of them? Like
main beers, or do you always use like different blends for different beers? When in terms of the bacteria?
No, this is the core. No, this is the main. This is the core. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And what's actually interesting is that we reuse our culture. So we don't repropagate, actually. We use it from batch to batch. So right now, actually, we're on generation 43 already of our house strains. So so it's alive and well. And of course, when we brew some different beers, when like yeast it likes patterns, it likes being cultured up to things. So once we, for example, brew a bunch of blonde beers in a row and then we brew a dark beer, it doesn't, the yeast like consistency doesn't like that. So it kind of like has a difficult time, and then we'll split it basically. We'll split from one into the other. We'll split the batches and we'll separate the yeast. This is literally just from one batch to the next, and then we'll kind of kill off that batch, but we'll keep the original one going. So I hope that was clear. I hope that made sense.
It's a lot, but I'm just trying to grapple with it. But it's interesting. But it sounds like, so you've got this yeast used to make a lot of kind of different kinds of beers. But if it's a beer that's a pattern is completely too different, the yeast just doesn't connect to the beer, and it has to.
Yes.
Okay. And then you just stop it.
Well, what we do is it's called top cropping.
Okay.
So literally during primary fermentation, we do ale. It's an ale yeast, so it's most of the activities at the top of the beer. So what we do is top crop it. We literally just like scoop off like buckets full of yeast during primary fermentation, and then we'll save that. So
and this
we'll
is
have
the creamy stuff on the top.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. So so we have multiple like buckets worth of this yeast. And for example, if we'll do the next batch, if we know that's going to be, an off the path type of beer, we'll just use one of those buckets, but we'll keep the other one, which is still the original range, for the next time when we brew a blonde beer, we can just use that one again. You understand? So it's like you split it off.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's really at the core of our brewery is our yeast profile, and it's what sets us apart. It's what makes us unique, because no other brewery will be able to, even if we, give them our recipe,
it won't be the same.
and they can brew it. It wouldn't be the same. Yeah.
Yeah. This is what I love about natural fermentation. It's the same with natural wines, right? Like with every time you make it, it's always going to be a little bit different, and that's what makes it so appealing, because you crack open a bottle and you never 100% know what you're going to get. Yeah.
No, exactly. And we embrace that very much. One of the things that we really focus on is with each release of a beer that we do. Speaking of which, yeah, exactly. Cheers. I'm going to do the same. There we go.
Yeah.
What we do is we, cheers, proost.
Nice.
Proost. Yeah, there you go. I got one of my own beers here. We're going to go. So, oh yeah, wait. There we go.
Oh, beautiful. That looks amazing. That's a dark porter, I guess.
This is a dark one. So this one, it's unreleased so far, but let me actually just show you the bottle. It's
okay.
It's called Ven. You can see that, Ven.
Yeah, Ven. And
yeah.
What does that
Ven,
mean? And
yeah.
what type of beer is it?
I honestly don't know. But it's, yeah, I'm like not involved in the naming process. Like I just make it.
That's great.
So this is technically a stout, but like sour, because all our beers tend to be, well, I don't like using the word sour. Tart. It's a tart beer that we do. So this is a stout that's tart. So it has all your traditional kind of stout character, which would chocolate, coffee. It's a little bit fuller than most of our other beers, but what makes this one unique is that we double barrel aged it. We barrel age about 80% of our production on red wine barrels, and so this one saw both red wine barrels, and then we did a flavor finish on bourbon barrels, American bourbon barrels, and that's what this is. So it's
got that kind of sweet root beer kind of flavor to it, I guess.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it sounds.
It's got that vanilla and coconut from your American oak, but it has like the nice rich tannins from the red wine barrels, and it has the base character of the beer itself, which I'm a huge fan of dark beers in general. So this is one of my favorites right now.
Well, I've got two questions, and I'm going to try and to segue both into it. But what makes you guys use wine barrels? I'm really curious about that.
Ooh, yeah, great question. So I'm gonna answer this in two trains of thoughts, really, which is with beer making and the use of barrels. There's really two approaches, and one of them is flavor infusion. And you'll see this quite often with whiskey barrels, with bourbon barrels, for example. But any type of any spirit really will give you a heavy infusion. And the whole purpose is to literally you put beer on the barrel just so that you get all the flavor and you extract it from that barrel. So whatever spirit it had in there before, you want to infuse that in there. So a popular one is a imperial stout that's bourbon barrel aged. Another popular one is whiskey barrel aged. Right nowadays, you're seeing a lot more like tequila and rum barrels being used. Some more funky kind of local spirits. Some people do gin as well. But then when you're going into the wine barrel region, people they go for the infusion. But for our purpose, we actually use the barrel more as a second home for all the wild bacteria and yeasts. Because it's wood, yeast needs to attach to something, so it literally lives inside the wood. And that's why we use them. We use them as a second home. And the wood, obviously, it breathes. It's a barrel, so it's well, you age it first of all, but it's I forget the word. It's porous, so it breathes with the natural environment. So humidity is very important. Temperature is pretty important, and you have an ebb and flow, just like breathing, of the wood, and this helps age the beer in our case. So that's why with sours, unfortunately, but with mixed firm beer, a barrel is almost an essential ingredient within your production process. So we have 160 barrels here in house, and they're about, I think, 150 of those are red wine, and then the other ones that we have some sherry barrels, and we have some bourbon barrels. But yeah, to answer your question, really, it's the purpose is to be a second home to our house culture, our house yeast. And what we've realized is we reuse all our barrels for as many times as we can. Most of the barrels right now, we're on their 6th or 7th fill even, but a few are still on their 1st and 2nd. And we've been noticing that with each consecutive fill, the flavor hits our preference, or like our spot, our perfect spot, like in a lot shorter time period, because the yeast culture is so strong inside the barrel. So that's in a nutshell, that's why we do it.
If you keep reusing the barrels, does the yeast kind of go down and becomes less powerful or less active?
I'm sorry, the what becomes less powerful?
With every use of the barrel, every time we put beer inside to age it, to ferment it, does the amount of bacteria kind of lessen down? Does the flavor impact get lessened with every use, or does it get more?
No, actually, on the contrary, it okay, in terms of flavor, in terms of the wood flavor, so you get the tannins of the wood, that's there, and you are stripping it a little bit more from the first use. You had still some red wine flavor, obviously, but each consecutive use you have less red wine flavor, but more of our house yeast flavor.
Right.
Okay. So that develops again, and so in terms of souring, really the aging of the beer, that happens in a lot shorter time period with each consecutive use. Yeah.
Okay. And why do you choose to use more red wine? Like, can you use white wine barrels as well? Like,
sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Is there a particular reason? No. Red wine, I think, is a little bit. It has more. It's less sharp.
Yeah.
First, it has more depth. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's less sharp. It's ultimately fuller. I mean, you can use white wine barrels, but yeah, red wine barrels, I think, were just the convenient choice in that regard. But also, it is the most type of barrel used in mixed fermentation. Yeah. Like across the board. Not everyone, but across the board, the red wine is used the most. Maybe because they're cheap. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to tell you.
and where do your red wine barrels come from? Like predominantly.
Ours we got from Spain.
Nice.
So we got them. Yeah. So we got them from like the Rioja region. So we're not 100% positive, but we can, determine that they had Rioja wine on there. Yeah. And they were probably used for a cheap wood infusion, for which a lot of red wine, especially Rioja, has. They needed that oak character. So the majority, I think all of them actually are French oak. So French oak, which is excellent, and gives a lot of, it gives some, not a lot, but it gives vanilla and it gives some coconut, to be honest. And of course gives that nice woody oak character, which you can find back in a lot of our beers. In comparison to, for example, American oak, which is a lot sweeter because it grows faster and it's less dense than French oak. So it has way more of the vanilla notes and the coconut. It's way more on the sweet side than French oak. Yeah.
It's amazing. That's something new. I never knew that. American oak, French oak, Spanish oak. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you. Sorry, please.
Yeah. No. Go for it. I just wanted to say with our barrels, it's they're like I said, they're really just as important in our production process as every other step within the brewing, honestly. So because we age so much of our product, of our beers on red wine, or old barrels, and each barrel, you have to understand, is unique because it has its own thing.
Environment.
Yeah, absolutely. So even if we brew a batch and then we split it amongst our batch size is usually 6 barrels. So even if we brew one whole beer and put it on these 6 different barrels, after a while, mostly 4 months or longer, 6 months is the youngest that we'll ever do anything with a barrel aged beer. But even longer, 2 years, 1 year, whatever. But after the initial period, you'll start noticing slight nuances with each barrel, even though it's the same beer that's spread across it. So one barrel will be slightly more acetic, one slightly more fruity, one drier even will have more wood character than the other one, even though it's all the same beer. So there's those slight nuances, which brings me to my next step, which is blending. Blending different barrels together in order to make one new beer is also incredibly important, and is again an art form, I almost want to say, within our brewing process, which not, most breweries, they'll brew a beer and it goes to a stainless steel tank and then it ferments through and they package it and that's the beer. That's it. It's always together. Ours, we split it, like I said, between all these barrels, and then we got to kind of rebalance it out once we blend it back together again. So we'll take 6 or maybe even more, 8 barrels or whatever, and we'll have to blend those together to achieve the flavor profile that we want for that beer that's being released. So it's like you were saying with your natural wine and our brewing process, it's never identical. And that's also what I want to say. I don't remember if with each brew that we do, we very specifically mention the batch number, because it will, identify that it's different. And there's again those nuances, different release of the same beer,
and it's always going to taste different. Yeah,
it's going to be slightly different. It's like to the untrained palate, whatever, you'll be like, oh my god, it's the same beer, no problem. But like to other people, well, to us as well, obviously, there are those slight differences, which I cherish. I think those are pretty cool.
It's the little thing that makes it a bit more special, right? Like the little spices or whatever you want to call it, just that little pop. Yeah, unexpected. Yeah. Surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a surprise, a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, 100%. I'm also a very big fan of independent bottled whiskeys, and that's what I love about them as well. Like, you try one and then you try another one, even though it's got the same name. It's a different year, it's a different batch. It just tastes completely different. And
that's right.
I love how it always just gives you something more. Like you actually have to stop, sit, think, and it's really, it's just, I love it. Like it's a brain, body, mind, everything is just involved.
Yeah, which actually kind of nicely converts or steps into the next thing, which is what you said with each year. Same with like winemaking. Terroir is like, it's absolutely essential. And for us, we try and focus, as a brewery, we try and focus on that as well. So we use almost exclusively organic malts and organic hops. So like all our what are they called? Resources. Thank you. So our resources are all organic and local. So we strive to have everything within an 80-kilometer radius from our brewery. So we work a lot with herbs. We work a lot with fruits as well. All again biologically, organically grown. And each year, different harvests. 1 year, of course, everything is dependent on the weather and global warming and stuff. Things are happening, things are changing. So there are differences in terms of how juicy the fruit is, or how how much sunlight it got that 1 year as opposed to the year before, and that all influences the final flavor. And people tend to forget that fruits or seasonal products are seasonal for a reason, and our beer as a result is kind of a response to that, because we are so seasonally based with our production, especially our fruit beers, of course. But that there's always a difference. And again, with going back into the nuances in our core range, which mostly just hits stainless steel, there's differences in that, but there's a bigger difference, a bigger fluctuation of the quality of our, not quality, but of the profile, let's put it this way, of our seasonal beers. So again, our fruited beers, each one is very different, and that's dependent on the fruit that we use and the fruit that we get. And you know, we vocalize that very much. So again, terroir is essential to us, and it's very much a part of what we are as a brewery as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. I was also reading on your website about like how you guys are very big on sustainability, environmental issues. You ensure that whoever you buy your products from, your resources from, they're paid a fair wage. So everything is kind of consistent. It's very neutral. Like it's very, like you really care about what you're creating and the effects of it as well. And I read somewhere that you harvest all your herbs like in someone's garden. It's from fermented stuff. Yeah, it's website's amazing. You guys, you have to check out Neville's website. Yeah, and your food pairing suggestions on every page is just stellar. I love the little graph you did. Yeah.
No, thank you very much. You have our. This is a team effort, to be honest. Yes. But you have our communications lady to thank for that, Joyce. And
hey Joyce.
Yeah, this is this is our group effort, and we like with the food pairings, we think that's really cool. We want to kind of centralize that and try and promote you know, having one of our beers in combination with food. I know it's a popular thing generally, but we really want to kind of promote that as much as possible.
Yeah, which is nice. You don't often see food pairings, and usually what you see, it's always like chicken wings or something fried. But I like how when I looked at your website, there was none of that. It was like with cheese, with ham, with this. And I'm thinking, I love this. It's so different.
Yeah. Nice. Everyone here at the brewery, we're all vegetarian. So we also, so we also try and promote that, which is, no meat oriented food pairings. So then, the go-to is cheeses, and we're all. I mean, I'm definitely a big cheese head, especially when it comes down to like, you know, goat cheeses and like the funky cheeses. I'm all about that, and that pairs really well with the types of beers that we make. So we like doing that.
Because it's not, how does it go? Because you don't often hear about beer and cheese as a combination, right? So how is it coming together? How do they have a baby? It tastes so good.
It's godly, it's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. Well, because a lot of our beers, I mean, okay, there's two trains of thought really when it comes down to food and beer pairing. One is to combine, so to reinforce the flavor. So you'll take, for example, a sweet with another sweet, you know, to really like make something really sweet, or you'll try and balance it out. So you want to get something like really fatty and cut straight through it with something tart, for example. We try and think when we approach this, because this is a group thing, when we release a new beer and we're working together on these types of food pairings and the flavor profile, we talk a lot about what sensation and what feeling the beer gives us, and what we believe, what we feel literally, and we try and kind of like communicate that also with food, because you know, food is, I believe it's an emotional thing.
Yes.
You know,
100%.
You know, it's food, you know, it's the heart and the soul of a lot of things. So we try and combine that with our beers, and most of us really enjoy cooking and enjoy eating well, or you know, so we get inspired by a lot of local restaurants. We work together with a lot of local restaurants, and they normally do beer pairings, or food and beer pairings with our beers specifically. And we have even a few restaurants that do specific menus oriented around our beer. So we'll be re-inspired by that, and we'll do that on the little cards and stuff. Like you said, we'll say some of the dishes that they made specifically for this beer, because we're blown away by it, and the combination is fantastic. I mean, unfortunately, we're not professional chefs, so it's like our knowledge in terms of making like the bomb meal is limited, but we do try and you know, delve deep within
but
that.
You guys make the amazing beer. That's the most important part, right? Let someone else handle the food. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So we just get a kick out of it, and we really
love
enjoy doing it.
Yeah, it's really nice to see this because it's honestly like it's so unique because you've always got your standard like IPAs, you've got your summer ales and whatever your starts, and then you've got a food pairing menu. And it's very burgers and meat and ribs, very classic American style kind of thing. But it's nice to be able to do it with cheese, to do it with prosciutto, to do it with something that's even like a vegetarian meal. It's completely unusual. I'd say I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So goat cheeses with our types of beers across the board, this is a broad statement. Goat cheeses work really well because they're funky, again, like what a lot of our beers have, that funk character. They're usually slightly, tart, the goat cheeses as well.
And what type of beer would go well with that? Sorry.
Ooh, actually, I have a great one here. I have a beer right here with me.
Oh, sweet.
This is one of ours. It's called Erva.
Oh, I think I've tried this the last time. The sour ale, yes.
Yeah, this is one of my personal favorites. This is one of our core range beers. It is a dry hopped saison.
Yes.
And it's delicious. I think it has we dry hop very lightly, but it has enough to give it more floral notes and that citrus tones, and it pops a little bit more. You could say this one's also slightly more bitter than your average saison, so you could say that it errs over towards the IPA side, but it's definitely not. This one would go well with like a young goat cheese, for example, because it has that freshness, it has a lot of that tartness,
that pop.
Whereas that pop, that's right. And that would carry really well with this beer because this beer is bone dry, but it has so much body and that fruitiness from the dry hopping that it makes you want to have more. Again, back to drinkability, crushability, and this with a nice young goat cheese, it's a really nice match. Yeah.
Sounds amazing. Sounds really amazing. Rob, this is it's a bit of a segue, but I'm really curious, and I'm sure there must be someone else who's asking. But what does dry hopping mean?
Okay, yeah, dry hopping. Okay, in a nutshell, it's adding hops to a beer that's already fermented. When you brew beer, on the hot side during the brewing process is normally when you add the hops, and the hops is normally added right at the beginning of the boil, which is when you've already extracted all your sugars from your grains and you filtered it, and then you have it in your boiling vessel, your kettle, and once it hits boil is when you add your hops. Normally you'll boil a beer for an hour. You can do that longer. You can do it for 75 minutes, 90 minutes. You can do it for 4 hours if you want it. That's up to the brewer, but an hour is standard. And you'll add the hops at the beginning of the hour, and that's mostly, it's purely for bitterness. You can add more hops towards the end of the boil, so it has a little contact time, and then you get more of the aromas. You get less bitterness and you get more aroma and fruitiness. So that's normally when hops are added, and then that's it. Dry hopping is adding hops post fermentation. So you've made your beer, it's fermented, it's essentially done fermenting, and then you add more hops when dry. So instead of adding them wet, you add them directly to your tank, and you have a contact time for a couple of days or a few weeks, even depending on your what type of hops you're using, depending on your process. We use organic whole cone, so like full leaf hops, whereas most breweries in the industry will use pelletized hops, which is you'll take an entire like a hop rank, and is that my phone guy? Hop rank, and they'll grind it together, and then they press it, they compress it into small pellets, so it has way more concentration. We go for, again, the natural approach, so we use the whole flour. So what we do is we just hang bags, we put it in bags, and we hang it directly in the top of the tank, and we'll have it
it's kind of like tea, right?
Like tea, we essentially that, but then with beer, so that's how we dry hop. Dry hopping is, again, just adding hops after your fermentation, after the hot side. So it's when the beer is cool, either cold or room temperature in our case, and then you get pure aroma because you're not boiling it. There's no heat added to it. You get nothing but aroma and flavor. which is what people want from a lot of the fruity hops as well. So yeah, that's what dry hopping is.
I love it. That's cool. It's good to know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's huge out there. I mean, IPAs, it's essential for an IPA. Now what's, a really popular beer style is the New England IPA, which is essentially hop juice. It's like they throw so many hops at these beers, which is ridiculous. And you're drinking it, it's not my preferred beer style. I can appreciate it here and there, but like they're using in like the ranks of like 35-40 grams hops per liter. That's absurd. That's so much.
What is the average amount that you would put in?
So for us, when we dry hop a beer, we'll dry hop 5 to 6 grams per liter.
Wow, that's about 7-8 tons.
Yeah. And that we're only dry hopping, and we'll do like a big flame out, so end of the boil edition, which again, more aroma. But no, in total, we're on the very, very low end of the spectrum when it comes down to how much hops we use compared to the New England IPAs that are out there.
It's a completely different style as well. I think you want your beer to kind of show off. It's more about, like you said, you're more East centric, right? So that is your main ball game.
Yeah, the yeast profile is very important to us. Nice. So we really just try and add all these other things to it because we think it's tasty, but we want it to add character to the beers that we make, as opposed to take away from our yeast character. So we want it to help each other out.
Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, how did Neville start? I'm really curious. And why did it start doing wild fermentation beers?
Yeah. Great question. So Navel was founded by 2 friends, Matthias and Vincent. They're the owners and the founders of the brewery. They met in university. They're both physics students at the time, and they got involved in a brew team, let's say, or a brew organization within the university, and they caught the brewing bug essentially. So they were just really inspired by what's available in terms of flavors of just beers generally, and fermentation. They were very big. Matthias is huge on fermentation, so he likes, like I mentioned before, we do cider, we'll do natural wine, kombucha, for example, like a lot of fermented things, fermented foods, kimchi, we're all pretty into that, but Matthias specifically. So that's really what's inspired him, the natural fermentation process. And I don't know, I guess the natural path that you can follow within the growth of your beer venture is really getting involved with natural, with mixed fermentation, because the flavor, it opens a whole new world of flavors that you can accomplish beyond the clean brewing side, as I talked to you about before. But so they started it together. They started the brewery I think in 2016 officially. But they were working, it was just the 2 of them, and they were working under a different name called, this Dutch word right here, katjelam. So katjelam literally translates to cat and lamb.
Cat and lamb.
Like cat and lamb, like a cat and then a lamb as in a baby lamb.
Okay, wow.
But it's also, it's kind of a joke because it's jargon for being shit-faced. So for like being really drunk,
Yes.
So that's how they started, and they gained traction focusing on mixed ferm and making sours, but they then ultimately decided to branch out and grow. And that's when they hired me, and they hired some of the other people that we have here now. And we've been growing ever since. But around that time when they decided to be like, okay, let's do this, let's actually go pro, they decided to change the name to Navel, which is first of all, internationally a way more approachable name than Katjelam. But it's also but it's also more professional just across the board, because to say that that if everyone would ask, well, then what does it mean? Is, if you're going to say it's like it's slang for being drunk, it's it doesn't. It's kind of difficult. So navel, by the way, in Dutch means like mist. Mist would be the best. Which is why our logo.
It's got
which is why our logo is this.
It's perfect.
So,
yeah. I kept thinking it meant belly button, like navel. Well, it's good to know that. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah. So in Dutch you pronounce it navel, but I guess English would be Neville.
Neville. Yeah, but navel sounds good. It's got a
mist.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
How did you get into beer? How did your journey kind of come in?
Ooh, yeah. How did I get involved in beer? Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, it started with me loving beer, period, but just by drinking it. But actually, Etienne, our mutual friend, he was the first one who he started brewing. Like 10 or 11 years ago, and he started home brewing with another friend of ours, and ultimately he just looked at me and he was like, "Yo, like, you want to brew with us?" And I was just like, "Fuck yeah!" Like, yeah, obviously. And this was like my first year at university or something, and I had never even, which is silly because I never even thought about brewing beer myself, even though I enjoyed drinking different varieties of beer. I was introduced to craft beer only maybe a year or half a year prior to that, so I already knew like what an IPA was, and I knew the different styles like here and there, but I was very novice in my knowledge in that during that time. But yeah, no, Etienne just asked me to brew with him, and then I was like, yeah. So we brewed together for a really, really long time as home brewers, and like I was saying with what happened to Matthias and Vincent, like I caught the bug. I just got ultimately like obsessed almost with everything that's available possible within brewing beer, the flavors that you can do, the different beer styles, everything, and literally all the endless possibilities. It's literally infinite. I can't like emphasize this enough. And it just really inspired me to continue doing it. And I got really, it's a hobby that got out of hand, really, let's put it this way. So I started, I was brewing every single week, and I was working a full-time job. So it consumed my free time. So, I was always busy with it, and I always wanted to learn more, and I always wanted to do new things, and I always wanted to perfect my craftsmanship. And, that led really from one thing to another. I was really fortunate. I was able to get an internship at a brewery in The Hague, which is where I was based at the time. And through that internship, I got a job there, and then that lasted for a while, and then I started doing my own thing again. Got personally more involved in mixed fermentation at home while I was doing the clean brewing over there, and then I landed a job here, and like now I've been here for almost 3 years. So it's weird. And back to Etienne, which is really funny, is like him and we started homebrewing together, and then we found our own paths. Yeah. And then we both got involved on a professional level. And the kicker is really we both ended up in Nijmegen professionally. So I'm brewing now at Navel, and he was then brewing at Ursup. Awesome. That's a brewery that's Ursup, which means primordial soup. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the brewery.
They're actually. Yeah, they're big. They also do mixed ferm, obviously, and they're literally right around the corner. We're like,
I think you're neighbors, right? Just next door to each other.
We're neighbors, yeah. But that's how I got involved in a nutshell. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's just kind of, when you look at it from an outsider's perspective, it's almost like all the pieces just kind of came together. It was like meant to be.
It's exactly. The puzzle pieces fell into place. Yeah, it was. It's great, and I was again very, very fortunate, and I was lucky. I worked my ass off, and I did a lot of independent research, courses and whatnot, everything to help further develop my technical knowledge, my practical skills, but also my palate, of course. Tasting is super important. But yeah, everything around that, and I still have a lot of love for the industry, and there's still more to learn. That's one of the greatest things I think about this industry, is that you're never maxed out. There's always other people being innovative, doing new things, different techniques, different things. Each brew house is unique. There's always different ways to approach a single thing, and that's I love it.
I love it, bro. Hey, if there was someone who's new to this industry, like he's always dreamt about making his own beer or getting a job to work in a brewery, what advice would you give him?
What advice would I do? Be prepared to work your ass off. Be prepared to work a lot. It's not easy. Brewing professionally, like large scale industrial, whatever if you want to call it that, it's backbreaking work. So be ready to really put in the elbow grease and be ready for some 14-hour days. Wow. If that's not in the cards, then sorry, man. Then I would say stick to home brewing, because home brewing is probably the most fun you will ever have. Because the experimental aspect of it is right there, and there's so much information, free public information available right now on brewing. A lot of people, there's a lot of really great people, a lot of super smart people that are making such a large contribution to making this more accessible to the masses, really, to be able to start with home brewing, and again, the information that's out there. But really, my main advice would probably be do it. Don't just go for it. Don't give up. And also read a lot. Honestly, knowledge is power when it comes down to this stuff.
And do you have anything to recommend?
There's so many great books out there. If you're novice, and if you're just getting started, it's called The Brewer's Bible, but it's the Home Brewer's Guide to Making Beer. Or I'm probably saying that wrong. I don't even remember what it's called right now, but that one.
We'll find a link and put it below, Mike. No worries.
Link it at the bottom. So he had a series. He wrote, I think, 3 different books. They're all phenomenal. He laid down the foundation of homebrewing, which he's American. Charlie Papazian is his name. So he's the author, and he is probably the heavyweight, or the godfather. A lot of people call him the godfather of homebrewing in the States, and made it so accessible. So he wrote, I think, 3 books that are all intro level. I would definitely start out with those. Then when you're getting into more technical and you're getting more geeky, a great book I can recommend is called Designing Great Beers. It's way more technical, and I actually find myself kind of looking back on it for formulas or some quick tips or whatever, problem solving things. Then I don't know, when it comes down to tasting and developing your palate, which again is a very important part, I would say tasting beer. It's called Tasting Beer, which is a super super introductory level book on how to properly taste beer. It has a lot of simple brewing history and all that crap, but it really makes it again approachable to not be intimidated on how to structurally kind of work your way around a beer and be able to help develop your palate. So which leads me to my next thing. If you really want to get serious about it, is work on your palate and taste, man. Taste a lot of beers. Tasting is different than drinking, unfortunately, but they overlap sometimes. But yeah, definitely taste a lot of things. Try beers that are out there, even beers that you don't like, or that you won't like, or there's a beer style where you're kind of that's not my thing. Give it a shot, man, because the more you try, the more you learn, and the more you can also kind of decipher what other people are doing, and maybe you'll be able to help or learn to identify things that you can find that are technically wrong with a beer, as opposed to what it's again the subjective versus
Absolutely.
objective. So that's always a difficult thing, because I have my preference in terms of what I like as a person, but then I have my professional opinion about what a beer is. And that's always, it becomes difficult and kind of frustrating at times, because with a lot of beers, I can't help but to like analyze, on a flavor profile about what I think of this beer. But yeah, I mean, really just do it, man. If you want to go for it, go for it hard, but definitely be ready and be prepared to put in, a lot of over hours and some major elbow grease.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Wow. Rob, I just want to say thank you very, very much for your amazing contribution to the show. I think this has probably been one of my favorite episodes so far.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to say, wow, completely blown away. There's so many facts. I'm looking forward to writing up the show notes later and just watching this over again. Yeah. Please.
No, I hope that my answers and explanations weren't too like scatterheaded or scatterbrained.
No, it was perfect. It was. I think people have to kind of watch the show a couple of times to really sink it in, which is the best way to do it. You kind of make them go, "Wait, I got to rewind. What did you just say?"
What did you say? Yeah.
I need to start taking notes, but it's great, mate. Just two last questions. One is, what makes you happy?
What makes me happy? Oh my God, dude, that's wow. In life, or that's
you can answer it any way you like it. Yeah.
Really, to be honest, like brewing makes me happy. Like, it's true, it's brewing, but it's like, it's kind of all aspects of it. So, even with the kind of tedious tasks that are not fun, like packaging, I get a level of satisfaction from it, because it may seem, it is simple, but it may be, literally, how can I break this down? It's like, okay, cool, you have a tank full of beer, and then like you package, and you package for, fucking like 8 hours or whatever, and then at the end of it, then you're looking at like 2 like giant cages filled with bottles, and you're just like, cool, that's nice. I feel accomplished because I just did this, and like for me, that gives me a major level of satisfaction.
Yes.
So I enjoyed that. What else do I enjoy? I love what makes me happy. Music makes me happy. Good food, a good beverage, having a great dinner with some friends. The simple things in life, you never forget those, man. Like the simple things in life are definitely worth it.
100%.
When it's sunny, so here in the Netherlands, it's not great weather all the time. So when it's sunny, like go outside, man. Like go for a walk, even if it's cold. Get that vitamin D, dude. Like go out there. These are things that definitely makes me happy. A nice bottle. I'm actually, you know what makes me really, really happy?
What makes you really,
is
happy?
When I go to a bar, and they serve my beer, right? And like I'm sitting down at the bar, and somebody next to me orders my beer, and they have no clue who I am. So I'm just sitting there, and like probably one of my favorite, most enjoyed moments is watching that person order the beer and be like, wow, this is delicious. And like actually, and see their like organic, like their natural reaction to my drink, and I get a huge grin on my face, and I'm just like, sweet. Then it confirms, and it makes me feel so proud of everything that I'm doing in that regard. It just total satisfaction, 100%. So that makes me happy. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's the best answer I've ever heard, mate. I love it. And how can people find you if they want to ask you questions or just get in touch?
Ooh, great. I say shoot me an email, man. My email.
Dangerous if you kind of put it up, because it might get flooded. I just say it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. But
Facebook,
I'm
Instagram.
always. I don't have an Instagram. I try and steer away from like social media and all these things. I do have a Facebook. Don't find me, please. No. Other people, no. But no, if you actually want to get in contact with me and like just want to, first of all, if you're in town, swing by. I'm always down to have a drink and chat and just talk shit, whatever, or definitely have a beer. If you guys have any other questions about the brewery or anything that we're doing, you can definitely shoot me an email It's robert@naval.org.
Mm-hmm.
If not, otherwise, if you just have any other technical questions, if you're a brewer out there and you want to know something about our process, I'm more than happy to share it with you. Recipes, more than happy to share. Like we're not secretive about any of our production processes. And yeah, again, if you want to swing by the brewery, you're more than welcome. We have a tap room. You know, we try and be as open and as welcoming as possible. So definitely that. Otherwise, yeah, if you want, just go to our website and check out what we have there. The brewery, of course, has an Instagram. I don't know. Yeah. The brewery is active on social media. I'm not, but everyone else is. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's it. So yeah. Come check it out. Come grab a beer.
I think we have to do
I'll
it.
be here.
Dude, I will, and we have to do a part 2 someday. I'm looking forward to it. There's still, I have like 20 questions. I think I went through about half of it, man.
Oof. Okay. All right.
I'm excited.
Well, then part 2.
Part 2 it is.
I'm ready for that. Yeah.
I'm hoping you too, mate.
Yeah. All right. No, guys, but it was great, man. It was great. Thanks for asking me, to come on your show. Yeah, I'm more than happy to always do something like that and talk beer. It's like my favorite thing. So yeah.
No, it's perfect, but you did such a fantastic job. It's so real. I really appreciate it. And I think these guys are going to enjoy it. So I just want to say thank you very, very much for watching, guys. This is Robert Muijzert. I hope I'm saying it right again.
Muijzert. Yeah.
Look for him. If you're ever in Nijmegen in Holland, it's going to be an amazing experience. I've been to the brewery myself and I've been blown away tremendously by everything I've tasted. So go look for him. Don't waste any more time and drink more wild fermentation beers. Till the next time, guys.
Yeah. All right. Take care.